Congressman John James of Michigan sits on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and a Michigan gubernatorial candidate. Congressman, great to see you. Thanks for coming on. What are your thoughts on the president's remarks? I mean, taking the time out at the World Economic Forum to highlight the fraud in Minnesota, one of the states, and his remarks this morning.
I think it's absolutely appropriate for the president to remind the world who America is and who he is. President Trump didn't have to use force to secure our borders within days when the previous administration failed to do it for 4 years. President Trump didn't have to use force to bring peace in Israel, to avert a crisis in India and Pakistan, and to bring less nonviolent conclusions to wars all over the world. And President Trump right now recognizing as an expert negotiator, the best in the world, that he has other levers at his disposal to accomplish America's multi-hundred-year precedent of maintaining autonomy in the Western Hemisphere. These are all things the president is doing to put American security first, to put our sovereignty first, and I think it's absolutely appropriate to remind Europe under the blanket, the American blanket of security that they enjoy.
And you talk about that. I think you just posted a few hours ago about auditing on day one if you do indeed get to the governorship in Michigan. Is that a concern in Michigan? Fraud?
Fraud is a concern everywhere for taxpayers and public servants who care about the people who they are entrusted to help steward their resources. When I become governor of the state of Michigan, because you asked, I'm going to begin auditing on day one. Everybody's looking at the up to $9 billion in fraud, maybe even more in Minnesota. But people have forgotten that in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer is spending $20 billion more per year than she spent during COVID. Where is that money going? These are the questions that taxpayers around the country and around states around our country deserve to have the answers to. And we're going to be digging down to the truth. And if we find the law has been broken, then people will pay the price.
Follow the money. In addition to the fraud in Minnesota, they've seen a number of this clashes between ICE, between protesters, agitators, professional demonstrators following the fatal shooting of Renee Good, who was shot and killed by an ICE agent. But these protests went even farther, interrupting a Minnesota church service, stopping it. In St. Paul specifically, the mob of anti-ICE agitators storming this church, Congressman, after protesters claimed a pastor was inside and he was affiliated with ICE. I guess that gave them what they thought their authority to stop this worship service. Well, AG Pam Bondi, she got on X and she wrote, "I just spoke to the pastor in Minnesota whose church was targeted. Attacks against law enforcement and the intimidation of Christians are being met with the full force of federal law. If state leaders refuse to act responsibly to prevent lawlessness, the Department of Justice will remain mobilized to prosecute federal crimes and ensure that the rule of law prevails." It is no question at this point that laws were broken. Congressman, your response?
The Unhumans are an open warfare with Western values and Christian values. This wouldn't have been tolerated on the left. It happened at a mosque. Why now in Christian churches? And then the violence being called for, the discomfort being called for by people like Don Lemon. I'd expect Don Lemon to know better. I was raised by people who came from the Jim Crow South who told me stories of when Democrats used to bomb and terrorize churches. We should have learned much, much more than to terrorize people in their church, their place of worship. I'm going to pray for Don Lemon and anybody who does that because they need Jesus. And as we become to seek a more perfect union, we need leaders who will stand up for Christian values, stand up for the right answer, and make sure that people, children, old ladies, and parishioners can worship Jesus, can worship God in peace without threat of physical harm from unhumans and extremists who will put their politics above their humanity.